It's important to know what shape might be on the bottom of this nut, which is going to have to change. Also to dress the frets properly, taking as little material as possible. But I wanted to make sure that I got everything nice and straight, and so I was reading the neck first by the frets. And at one point I noticed I had a rock. I don't know, what's that all about? Well, it's rocking about the 4th fret. And then I said, well, what's up with the fingerboard? Same deal. Rocking about the 4th fret. I got about a 2 mil gap from here up to here, and then it falls off. I just cranked it one more little turn, try and get it as straight as possible through here. A little bit of fall off here, level the frets, profile them, crown them, and then when the relief goes in, loosening the truss rod, putting the strings on, it should be nice relief. It should play pretty well. I want you to know how to do this as long as you're careful about it. So with the heat shut off actually, but the heat applied, really kind of snaggling the nut in between here. I got enough heat in there, I was able to very carefully, pressing mostly against the nut, move an X-Acto knife along like this. It felt gummy. Tapped a few times with the plastic end, tapped a few times with this, and it seemed like it was moving a little bit, so I was able to get the X-Acto knife under this edge. Okay, so now I don't want to cut anything, but a jeweler's screwdriver goes, and if I just push, I'm leveraging it out. So, there we go. Nuts out, and yeah, it has about a 12-inch radius, it looks like. Pretty close to 12-inch. So, let's go with a new one. These slots are way too deep, and you know, I'll keep this in the reserve for another day. I have received a fresh nut for this S500. It's an 1/8 inch. It says it has a 10-inch radius. This fingerboard, as far as I can tell, is 12-inch. This quote-unquote 10-inch radius nut has the curved bottom as well as top. I want to make sure that it mates nicely to the slot, so I'm going to show you a couple things. That's pretty good. So I think with that down on the bottom, and what I'll do is I'll kind of hold it by the ends, put that in and run it back and forth. I have to make this more thin first though, so I'm going to thin this up. That's my next order of business. Here's my new nut. The radius on the bottom, I'm not sure that it's matching the radius in the bottom of the nut slot, so I pencil up the bottom. I've got a strip of sandpaper in there. The thickness of this nut is 129. The old one was about 130, 129. Place this in here. It's not slotted, so it can go either way, but it should be symmetric at this point. And that's sanding. And so it's taken off material at the ends, which means this is like a 10-inch and the fingerboard's 12-inch. We want to get it to where all the pencil disappears. So we're using the 12-inch radius of the fingerboard to create a 12-inch radius in the bottom of the nut. Okay, so before I go much further, blow out the nut slot. I'd already filed it. Blow off the bottom of the nut. Yeah, I got most of the pencil off of there, that's good. That actually just feels like a nice fit right there. So I like that method, that works pretty well. I have to trim the ends down a little bit and round off the corners and get the slots transferred. I think it's pretty reliable that I can use the spacing here. I have a special measuring device for placing the slots in a nut, but I think this will work fine. Okay, so that'll be next. Okay, and so for what it's worth, I wanted you to see the old nut placed on top of the nut scale, string spacing rule, whatever they call it. This is laid out with increasing pitch going this way and tighter pitch going this way. What do I have to say about this? You make it so that the bass string is over on this side and the treble string is over on this side, and it seems to line up pretty well with this particular thing, so I can use that as a check. Later on, I can see if it seems to match up. I just want to check the thickness that this will cut. So that's about a 13, 14 thousandths. That's good enough for an 11. And this is about the same. So this one is bigger this way. This one, because it's smaller this way, would be a little bit stiffer in that direction. I think it's a good choice. It's what I've typically used, if I remember right. And I'll try and give you a quick once-over on slotting it. Alright, I'm not sure if you can see this real well. I still have to finalize the radius here. It's close. So what I really want to do is not mess up here. I carefully get some grooves going right on my pencil mark. So it's like any sawing operation, you have to get it started by sort of going backwards. Well, not true. A hacksaw on a piece of metal, you can usually rake it forwards and get the desired result, but this is more like woodworking. You want to, it's okay to saw backwards a little bit first to stake your claim territory. It's actually cutting pretty well that way, even though the teeth rake in this direction. It cuts a little bit coming this way, metal against bone. It's just the way it is, I guess. Get enough of a little groove started, I can check it against the string spacing rule, or whatever it's called. And I can check it against the old nut. So the old nut slots were way too deep, but it looks like they were put on roughly the right location. So it could be it was original equipment and it was just taken too deep, I don't know. Hard to see, but there's some little slots started there. We'll check it and then make them deeper. I checked against the old nut and the slots line up great. So I can deepen these cuts a little bit. Actually working back and forth. I went ahead and labeled this the bass side and this the treble side. And what that means is I'm going to want my relief to be going in this direction soon. But right now I'm really just getting these started, and I'm going to let the file do the work after. The main thing you're trying to do here is transition from that pulling the saw backwards to actually sawing back and forth and starting to try and develop some of that relief in the correct direction. You might notice I'm trying not to go too deep. Really just trying to get these started. Because believe it or not, this saw cuts pretty fast. I'm going to lay this down on the paper for a better look at it. I'm not the world's authority on using nut files, but having started with my saw, I'm going to take the 12 thousandths file and try and deepen that a little bit. Go back and forth, all the way across. Because when you think about it, if you try and go with a 10 thousandths wide saw kerf and go right into it with a 50 thousandths file, it's not going to work too well. So let's bring them all up together a little bit. Trying to start developing that relief going back this way, the way I want the string to be guided off the back of the nut. Remember, I marked it base side here, treble side there, so this is the fingerboard side and this is the headstock side. It is no longer symmetric. Or at least it's heading that way. It's marked the way I want it. Okay. Of course, alright, so the number one thing is I don't want to go too deep. And so I've got these combo files, they work pretty well, but the 20 thousandths cuts like a double V somehow. So even when I use it, I have to then chase it with something else to, well, I don't want to go there. Here we go. I have to chase it with something else to clean up that notch in the bottom. Now I've tried doing this with measurements, and I find the best way to get a nut to fit properly in its slot is to eyeball it. I've got a little meat left here, I've got a little meat left here. In other words, I can make it more narrow this way. And the thing is, you want to make sure you have plenty of purchase so that the high E string in particular, which is going to be bent a lot and is notorious for being too close to the edge, falling off the treble side of the neck, shaded a little bit so that that slots this way a little bit more. So I'm going to take a little more material off of here. That bass string is not going to fall off nearly as easily, so it can be a touch closer to this side, to the base side of the neck. Alright, what's this look like? Well, I need to take a little bit more off the base side, but I'll take a touch off the treble side as well. I think it needs to have a little bit off each end. And like I said, I try to eyeball it. I can pick up, my finger's catching on that. That's what I'm trying to say. So I know it needs to come down a little bit more. I'll take the nut out. This is the base side I want to take material off of. Take some material off there. So I have to remember that this is the fall away side towards the headstock. So I do a little radius towards that direction and blend it in. And it's really feel, kind of just taking a little bit off at a time. Then I said I was going to take a little more off the treble side. Let me just have a quick look here. Still got, I'm going to estimate about, a little less than a 32nd of an inch overall to go. Close to a 16th maybe. So I want to take some off of here as well. This is pretty coarse. I think it's 220. No, it's 400. Sandpaper. And nothing special. It's not anything fancy. So this is the fall away side. Carry the radius through. And in fact, go ahead and blow this off. Let's see if we can get a look at its overhang now. Getting close. Catches here, catches there. So I'm not undersized, that's good. Now, some of that catching, you gotta watch out because it can be more on the up high stuff. But it's catching here a little bit, catching here, so I'm getting close. So even though my finger's catching, I gotta make sure I'm only taking a little bit more off the actual width. So if we do want a number right now on this S500, this corner to corner is 1.682, and I know for a fact that's getting close. If I just measure across the neck at that point, I get 1.653. What did I say? 682, so it's about a 32nd, like I said. But you want to make sure that you're actually measuring here where it's more like 1.655. So about a 32nd to go, one little bit at a time. Try and give you a little look at the strokes I take now that I'm getting close. I'm mostly, let's orient ourselves here. This is the bass side, this is the treble side. My fall away is like this. So as I go like this, I want to take more off this surface, not so much there. So I use, for the initial just rounding of the corner, strokes like this. That's going to create a bit of a radius here. And I don't want to go too far because I'm almost eating into that groove right there. So I want to knock more down on the corner, so to speak. It'll all flow together nice. A little bit more in the width. Now the fall away side is back here, and so I can go a little more there. But these are just like one direction sweeps across the sandpaper now, instead of back and forth. And pop it into the slot. It's very close as far as the dimension. 1667. I've got about 12 thousandths of an inch to go. So nice and easy now, and I want to take a little more off the treble side, so don't want to forget to do that. I want to get the treble side radius a little more gentle, take some of that meat off that corner so it doesn't catch on stuff. Okay, and then work that treble fall away side just like we did on the bass side. So it's more like that. And yeah, you can use a file. Sandpaper works pretty fast and easy. Alright, dimensionally, this is about the same as this. And it catches a little bit still. So my thought process is this. If I put this in here to where it seems about right, kind of clamp it with my thumb, and take a look, it looks good. And the little bit that's catching, I can knock down with a file after I've glued it in. It looks good on this side too. And the little bit that I'm catching, so it's not too narrow. If I went any further, it would be. So I'm going to glue it in like this, and that means I need to put the strings on. Why? Because I use the strings to apply the pressure. So what we're going to do is we're going to string it up without gluing it. We're going to make some measurements on the depth. We're going to figure out what needs to be done as far as filing goes, and we're going to make it work. The new nut's in place. Going to check the nut slot depth now. Let's get this zeroed out properly enough. Okay. This is a 19 thousandths feeler gauge. Way more than 19 thousandths clearance. That's good. Let's see. Why don't we go for, here's 35. More than 35 thousandths clearance. Let's see. It's a little concerned about this guy. Let's see what we have. Let's go back to the 19. Oh, way more than 19. How about this guy? Way more than 19 thousandths clearance. check this guy. I was a little concerned about number 2. More than 19. Clearance. What this means is the nut slots, I can take them down to where they need to be now. And a good trick is to measure the height of the frets over the fingerboard. And then I can, this is at half tension, by the way. So the see, the readings are A sharp, D sharp, G sharp, C sharp, F, and A sharp. That's the way it goes to get to half tension. It's like a 7th or something like that. 7th flat. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's 7th, but anyway. So here we are. Zeroed out on the first string. Okay, so I can file these down. If I can measure the height of the fret over the fingerboard, that's about 48 thousandths, and I want, what spec is 16 or 18? Let's say it's 18, that would be 66 thousandths. So if I take a strong 1/16 of an inch, it happens to be this guy, I can put that here and file until I hit that, or try and stay away from hitting that. That'll keep me from going too far, and check again. So I'll do that. The 6th string is 46 thousandths of an inch. I have a nut file that's 50 thousandths. That's good. We don't want it to bind in there. And as advertised, if this were to hit, I would be done. And what I'm trying to do is introduce relief. In other words, the V groove has to go this way, right? You don't want to go in this way. Like that. So you can go flat until you get to the right depth, and then introduce relief, but I prefer to go relief all the way. And you want to make sure it's not binding, so you kind of work it, you wiggle it a little bit. 6th string, remember there was like a 39 thousandths gap at half tension, 1st fret to the string. And this is a combination that makes 27 thousandths now. I'm at 0. Come in like this, I'm around 0. So I'm about 27 thousandths. The distance I want is 18 thousandths of an inch. Given the vagaries of gluing this in and everything, you don't want to go too far, so I'll take a little bit more off. But I'm getting close to where I want it to be before it's glued in, and then I'll do the final tweaking. One more check. I've got a combo of 25 thousandths here. I come in. It's big by about 1 thou, maybe 2. So therefore, I'm looking at 24 thousandths, 23 thousandths. That's getting close to the 18, so let's not push our luck. We'll move on to the next string. 5th string, quick check-in, pre-gluing the nut. This is combo making 33 thousandths of an inch. It's about 33 thousandths. I have to come down 15 to hit my 18, so I'll try and come down around 7 or 8, maybe 10. I can't caution you on this enough. The reason you stay away from going too far is because it can just happen. So I was being very cautious. I was at 33. I took a somewhat aggressive cut on the nut, but thought it was appropriate. And now I've got, let's see, I've got 19 here. Alright. A moment ago I thought I had about 19. Let me see what I got. Let me just take this 24 and put it in. Okay. 24 is about where I'm at. That's as far as I want to go. That's why you have to re-zero every time. That's why I have to be careful. So I've got about 6 thousandths to play with. That's perfect. 4th string, down to 33 thousandths gap. 15 to go, but I want to leave about 6 or 7, so try and go down another 6 or 7 thousandths. Well, I gotta tell you, man, I should be more tolerant, but I hate these locking tuners. I've seen nothing but stuff like this from them. Going to loosen the string, it wouldn't loosen. Like, what's up with that? The string broke right where the locking tuner was grabbing it. I've seen that a lot. I don't like that. Third string, 25 thousandths. That's a good spot to leave it until it's glued in. And I decided on the fourth string, instead of putting in another string, I'll wait until I glue in the nut, do the finish profile work, and go through and get serious about these notches. Second string, spot on, 45 thousandths. Second string, I kind of went to town filing. I ended up with, is it 20 thousandths? Just about 20 thousandths, so it's a little closer than I like to get before bonding the nut in, but it's okay. First string, combination 13 and a 14 makes 27 thousandths. I'm at 27 thousandths. I'll come down just a little bit, be a little conservative, and after a little bit of filing, I'm at 27. After a little more filing, I'm at 26 thousandths, so I'll leave it there. Now that I'm confident this nut is going to work for this guitar, I want to bond it in before I do the final slot depth and profile tweaking. So I'll need these. But for this operation, I just want to dilute a little tight bond. And I need an implement that's just going to let me put a little bit into the tight spot. So these dentist picks work pretty well. Keep plenty of paper towel handy. Alright, so what I tend to do is apply a little adhesive both to the nut slot and to the nut to make sure I get a good bond. It doesn't have to be a perfect bond, but the gap is filled by the glue. So you want to make sure you have enough. That's part of the reason you dilute it. You also get a little more working time. It may not be quite as strong in case you have to take it back out. Dread the thought of that, but it can happen. Alright, but we want to get the excess off. Alright, we'll get a little bit on the nut. That's actually a pretty good amount there. Let's see, make sure it's the right way. Base side over here. I focus on the bottom, and then I try to delicately get a little bit up where the nut is going to meet the fingerboard on its face. Hope that makes sense. It's hard to talk and do stuff at the same time. Here we go. I think my best bet is to bring it in from the treble side. Once I contact, I have to make sure I keep it moving until it's in the right spot. That's an old string, I don't care about that. Now the back and forth, I know the feel that I'm looking for. Excess. Okay. And yeah, that's good. That's what I'm looking for. Just gonna let that. I really want to get the strings up to tension quickly, but I got to get this excess out of here. And I've got some Q-tips. double check the position. Position's good. I want to go up to tension. Now for this I want full tension, not half tension. And what I'll do is I'll crank up the strings to full tension. Notice, let's see, the G string is not in there right now. I'm going to have to use the new one for that. Oh, a quick correction to what I said earlier. It's the D string that's missing. Get these up to pitch. Gets the force on there. It acts like the clamp. My G string, get it up to pitch, and get the B string up to pitch. A, B. Okay, so the new nut is on there. It looks good. I want to come around the back with a small implement and get this little bit of excess. It should be a well bonded nut. My groove depths are, slot depths are correct. So we're styling. And I like the way it looks. I think it's a big improvement aesthetically over this one. Cheers. So I've strung this up with new strings. They're tuned to pitch. I'm going to check the relief, double check the action, make sure it's not too far off. And then I'm going to tune back down to half tension, finish filing the nut slot depths to get 18 thousandths clearance between the first fret and the respective strings. And then I will check the balance on the tremolo bar. I still have the spacer under the bridge here so that the springs underneath are adjusted properly, and intonate it, and it should be in good shape. Things went well. I have all the nut slot depths to get that reading of 18 thousandths is the spec at half tension, and it ranges from 16 to 20 plus or minus 2 thousandths, and that's perfect. So I've got it up to pitch, and I'm going to, and the spacer block basically falls right out there, so there's not much adjustment that needs to be done on the springs for the tremolo bar, the whammy bar. What I can do, pulling that spacer up may change tone just a little bit there, so yeah, we'll have to tweak it just a speck, and it's getting close to being done. I got to do intonation and get that balance right. Great guitar. Hey, this S500's in great shape now. Had to replace the nut. The old one, the slots were way too deep. After doing that, the new nut is in beautiful shape, within a couple thousandths of an inch on the spec. As far as setup goes, the relief is now within a couple thousandths of an inch of spec. The action is within a couple thousandths of an inch. The pickup heights, everything. The tremolo bridge, everything is all set up to spec. This is really quite a fine guitar now. I'm liking this S500. liking it. We've got it set up good. I think it'll do the trick.